Thank you, death, for teaching grace.
Thank you, death, for sacred space.
Thank you, death, for gentle release.
Thank you, death, for promised peace.
Thank you, death, for ending pain.
Thank you, death, for easing strain.
Thank you, death, for silent care.
Thank you, death, for love still there.
Thank you, death, for closing a door.
Thank you, death, for opening more.
Thank you, death, for souls set free.
Thank you, death, for eternity.
Thank you, death, for holy rest. Thank you, death, for final test. Thank you, death, for mercy kind.
Thank you, death, for calming mind.
Thank you, death, for soft goodbye. Thank you, death, for spirit high. Thank you, death, for sacred sleep. Thank you, death, for vows we keep. Thank you, death, for ending fear.
Thank you, death, for holding dear.
Thank you, death, for divine flow.
Thank you, death, for letting go.
Thank you, death, for quiet light.
Thank you, death, for endless night.
Thank you, death, for cosmic home.
Thank you, death, for soul's return.
Thank you, death, for unseen hands.
Thank you, death, for higher plans.
Thank you, death, for gentle ways.
Thank you, death, for guiding stay.
Thank you, death, for timeless love.
Thank you, death, for stars above.
Thank you, death, for sacred shift.
Thank you, death, for final gift.
Thank you, death, for closing scars.
Thank you, death, for healing hearts.
Thank you, death, for sacred role. Thank you, death, for making whole. Thank you, death, for peace profound.
Thank you, death, for holy
Ground. Thank you, death, for ending ache. Thank you, death, for calm you make. Thank you, death, for divine call.
Thank you, death, for freeing all.
Thank you, death, for silent song.
Thank you, death, where souls belong.
Thank you, death, for gentle truth.
Thank you, death, for eternal youth.
Thank you, death, for higher sight. Thank you, death, for endless life.
Thank you, death, for mercy wide.
Thank you, death, for loving tide.
Thank you, death, for sacred end.
Thank you, death, eternal friend.
Thank you, death, for quiet grace.
Thank you, death, for soft embrace.
Thank you, death, for easing breath.
Thank you, death, for holy depth.
Thank you, death, for timeless calm. Thank you, death, for healing balm. Thank you, death, for fading cry. Thank you, death, for lullaby. Thank you, death, for closing fights. Thank you, death, for peaceful nights. Thank you, death, for pardon deep. Thank you, death, for tears to sleep.
Thank you, death, for gentle close. Thank you, death, for wisdom rose. Thank you, death, for lessons sealed. Thank you, death, for wounds healed. Thank you, death, for sacred pause. Thank you, death, for higher loss. Thank you, death, for truth revealed. Thank you, death, for hearts unsealed.
Thank you, death, for quiet prayer.
Thank you, death, for loving care.
Thank you, death, for easing Lord. Thank you, death, for light road. Thank you, death, for grace restored. Thank you, death, for soul assured. Thank you, death, for fear undone. Thank you, death, for journey begun.
Thank you, death, for silent sky.
Thank you, death, for wings to fly.
Thank you, death, for homeward stream.
Thank you, death, for endless dream.
Thank you, death, for final sigh.
Thank you, death, for tears run dry.
Thank you, death, for tender close.
Thank you, death, for sacred rose.
Thank you, death, for grace at last.
Thank you, death, for pain now past.
Thank you, death, for light and breath.
Thank you, death. Thank you, death.